What's poppin', people? It's Dante. Today we're going to be discussing street photography inspiration. I'll be giving you some ideas about what inspires me, and hopefully you can come home with a better understanding of what inspires you and how you can cultivate inspiration to go out there and to practice street photography. And so ultimately, inspiration is everywhere. I find that you just need to know where to look. I find inspiration in nature. I find that when I'm walking on a nature path and I'm in solitude, I find myself infinitely inspired through the novelty of God's creations. If you look at the details at the macro level of the veins in a leaf or the bark on a tree, I find that I'm re-inspired to go out there and to photograph, as nature essentially reminds me of how open the world is and how big the world is and how amazing the cosmos are, how we're connected to everything. And this is something very personal to me, and I find that ultimately when I slow down and I go for a walk in nature, I become so inspired. And so after a decade of street photography, I still wake up excited to shoot, and it's simply because I set myself up with this abundance mindset each and every day, where I'm simply grateful to have the ability to go out there and to make new photos each day, because ultimately this is what provides joy in my life, is photography itself. And so through walking, observing, and looking at some books, maybe I'm looking at photo books or reading some philosophy, or just finding myself immersed in urban life on a street corner and watching life go by in a park, or listening to some music that's live or performances on the street, I find myself inspired. And so there's an endless search for inspiration, I find, and you can find it pretty much everywhere. And these are some of the very basic things that inspire me. And so if you look at the street as a stage, everything becomes beautiful. When you see somebody passing by with an umbrella and they're watching a parade and they're in the rain, these kind of moments become cinematic. And this is what's beautiful about photography, is the street is like a theater, and the actors upon the stage are a part of our drama and something that we can use to articulate and put order to through our frames. And I find that observing the patterns of people and observing movement and the different moments on the street, they inspire me genuinely. I find that if you sit in a park on a bench and you simply watch these moments pass you by, this to me is enough to keep me inspired. And so I find that the first thing that we should do to cultivate inspiration in street photography is pick up some photo books that you resonate with. I personally find a lot of inspiration through my collection of photo books. I believe that they allow you to study some of the masters of photography and develop your own style. And so my favorite photo book is The Mennonites by Larry Towell. Larry Towell's work is phenomenal. It's very traditional black and white documentary photography, and I find it to be infinitely inspiring as it puts you in this new world. And this to me is the power of a photo book, is it can inspire you through looking at these new places and give you a sense of inspiration to go out there and to tell your own stories. And so using photo books for inspiration is a very fundamental way in which we can stay inspired as street photographers. I have them laid out on my coffee table. I actually just most recently picked up Trent Park's Monument and Daido Moriyama's Record 2, looking at a lot of black and white photography that inspires me. I've always been inspired by black and white photo books. These are honestly some of my favorites. And I think that there is something about returning to the photo books often and seeing what images stick with you and identifying what resonates with you and why. I also simply use them as decor. I have them, all throughout my cabinets and shelves and different places in my place here, and I just find them to be aesthetically beautiful and inspire me to just go out there and make photos. And so there's something about looking beyond photography as well and looking at different mediums and different art that I find to be very inspiring. One of the painters that I'm very much inspired by is Caravaggio. His use of chiaroscuro and high contrast black and white or high contrast lighting is very inspiring to me. I've actually had the privilege of looking at some of his paintings in person during my trip to Rome, which was just phenomenal, absolutely breathtaking. And I have his book actually right here. You can see where I have the paintings of Caravaggio in his full collection, which is a very good book here to look at for inspiration. I love the cinematic quality of the scenes and the biblical scenes, as well as the aesthetics. And I find the aesthetics to be sublime, the moments within the paintings to be sublime. And I find that there's something deeper that we can get to when it comes to inspiration than just looking at photos, but looking at paintings and looking at the way in which other photographers use similar techniques. For instance, here we have a photograph by Ray K. Metzger in Philadelphia, photographing this sailor in City Hall. And essentially, I find that the use of high contrast black and white and the use of light and shadow play to be a way to simply evoke this notion of the sublime. And I find them to be aesthetically beautiful and otherworldly. And this to me is my goal going forward, is to push myself to go beyond the traditional notion of making a document or a photograph that depicts reality as it is, but to go out there and to photograph what life could be. And so I also find inspiration from photographers like Alex Webb. Here we have a photograph from Leon, Mexico in 1987. This beautiful image of the child there with the eye being revealed from the box. We have this beautiful light and shadow, the striking colors, and the heat of the sun. These moments I find to be very much intriguing, mysterious, and I love the use of light and shadow in photography, and this is something that I'm looking at to inspire me. And so here we have a photograph that I made in Rome, Italy in 2023 of light and shadow play, as we have the hand revealed in the foreground in relationship to the nuns in the background. And this to me is how I'm trying to photograph these days, making minimalist compositions and simple frames that use light and shadow to elevate the mundane. And so I find that the act of walking and discovering new places and simply traveling and going out for a nice walk is enough to inspire you. Inspiration is very simple. I think you can simply detach from any external sources, as much as these books, these photos, and these painters can inspire you. But to simply just go out there and immerse yourself in life. Here I'm walking along the Spanish Steps, and I find that movement fuels my creativity. Walking stimulates observation and new perspectives. And one of the things that I like to do is to find myself at an elevated point of view where I have a panopticon view of my surroundings, where I can look 360 degrees around, just like I'm recording here with a 360 degree camera. When I'm out on a bridge or I'm out looking beyond the horizon on a cliff, I find myself infinitely inspired, as when you're out there and you're at an elevated view, or an elevated surface rather, you remind yourself how open the world is, how you can keep going beyond the horizon. I remind myself that there's so much to do, to see, to explore, and to photograph when I find myself walking endlessly. And I encourage you to simply treat walking as this act of discovery, and to find yourself inspired through movement itself and observing the different details around you, whether it's pigeons flying, reflections on a puddle, or the interactions that occur on a busy street. And so my passion, maybe my number one love in life besides photography, is just simply walking and immersing myself in the outdoors. And so I find a lot of inspiration by the river. I go for these long walks here in Philadelphia along the Schuylkill River, and I love watching the waterfall and the movement of the water flowing down the stream. And I love going for these long walks, as essentially when I walk on this path, what I love about the path and the bike trail specifically is when I'm walking, there's really only two options. You either go forward or backwards. And so, if I go left, I'll fall into the river and I'll drown. If I go right, I'll probably get hit by a train on the train tracks. And so it really locks you in to this one path, and there's only one option, and that's to just keep marching forward. And there's something about that inspires me. It's removing the decisions of whether or not I go left or right, and just continuously marching onwards. And I love that. I love this path, as it pretty much extends endlessly throughout Pennsylvania, and you can just keep walking. And I find that walking, it recharges my creativity. It encourages mindfulness, where I remain present in the moment. And sometimes you'll find yourself in unexpected situations, maybe make conversation with strangers, or find yourself making new photographs of new people or new places. There's something simple about walking itself that it never ceases to not inspire me, right? It's always something that reinvigorates my creativity. I find walking, not even just in the city looking for street photos, but walking in nature specifically, is the thing that inspires me most, I must say. And so there is something also about just observing the chaos of the streets, observing the light and shadow play in the tunnels of City Hall and the way that people move upon the street, listening to the traffic, the conversations, the chaos, the honking of the cars, the noise of the streets, watching the movement of people, watching the visual rhythm that exists in the urban cities. And I love the dichotomy and this sort of balance between walking in nature and walking in the city, and finding myself inspired in both situations. Whether I'm on a busy street corner or on a nature path, I find that there is something about the sounds, the smells, the sights of these different locations where I can listen to the sounds of the birds or listen to the chatter of the people and find myself inspired by these very simple pleasures. One of the things I'm very interested in is the actual etymological roots of the word inspiration. If you think about the word inspiration, inspirare meaning to breathe into, originally meant divine influence, or similar to God giving life through giving breath. And, this to me is a very interesting way to think about inspiration. One of the things I've been doing, and it's very sad actually, the Wanamaker building is closing here in Philadelphia, but we have the world's largest playing pipe organ here in Philadelphia. And every single day for 2 years straight, I listened to this organ at 5:30, pretty much every day as a routine. And needless to say, it's inspired me a lot. I think that beautiful music, sublime music, this can uplift your spirit and breathe life into you. I think that ultimately there is something about the building itself, architecture, sculpture, and music, and the combination of the three that becomes the trifecta for me personally as some of the highest elevated forms of art itself, where when you're standing in the center of the Wanamaker building, looking up at a high ceiling in front of a large bronze sculpture of an eagle, and you're listening to the sounds of this beautiful organ, there's something spiritual about the experience that lifts your spirit up, almost like you're going beyond the tall ceiling itself, reaching for God. And this to me is a very beautiful thing about art itself, is its ability to transcend this reality in a way. And I found that the Wanamaker organ, very simply put, has inspired me and reinvigorated me each and every day for the past 2 years straight. Very sad that it will be gone soon. But here's some of the music that I was listening to inspire me. And so to stay inspired as a street photographer, I think setting creative constraints and staying simple is critical, where, just sticking to a single camera, sticking to a single lens, whether or not you're going to be shooting color, black and white, just stick with it, right? I find that ultimately by eliminating all of these decisions, eliminating all of these superfluous things, can create discipline in your practice. And by returning to simplicity, I believe you can cultivate curiosity and simply treating photography as a meditative practice to see the city with fresh eyes each day through this sort of sense of wandering each day with your camera. You can find yourself inspired, essentially. And so the journey never ends, right? You cannot make the same photograph twice. This to me is one of the thoughts that inspire me endlessly. Seriously, it's like there's just so many possibilities with photography. I could rant about this for the next hour, where there's just so much to photograph, and photography is endless. And so I encourage you to embrace the unknown and let inspiration find you. Go outside, move your feet, observe, the street is waiting for you to go out there and to explore and to conquer and to photograph. And so I think that inspiration is all around you. You just got to slow down and look at the details. For me, once again, to conclude the video, nature, spending time in nature, spending time in solitude, listening to the sounds of the birds, going to a busy corner, sitting on the park bench, listening to the chatter of people, the honking of the cars. There's something about the live performances and music you can hear on the streets. Photo books inspire me, looking at beautiful paintings, and simply going out there and walking and exploring and finding myself on an elevated cliff, a bridge, or somewhere where I can see beyond the horizon inspire me to go out there and to push myself to move and to photograph more. And so I encourage you to find ways in which you can inspire yourself. These are some of the things that inspire me. And so hopefully these give you a better idea of how you can stay inspired to go out there and practice street photography. And so, yeah, with that being said, thank you for watching today's video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.